Sorry about that. So hello everybody and welcome to the Sober Sessions today. And today we're delighted to be joined by Polly Jukes and Rachel Welford. We're going to be talking about mental well-being and strategies to look after yourself. You know, obviously we were just talking a little bit before about the lockdown fatigue. And those kind of anxiety or frustration or resentment kind of, you know, amping up. So we wanted to sort of take that as a theme today, and also just to sort of introduce Rachel and Polly to you as really good resources that you can tap in to. Polly's an empowerment coach. She has many skills in Reiki, EFT, MBIT.
Yeah, MBIT, which is kind of aligning the head, the heart and the gut. So really tapping into that intuition, which so easily gets lost when we're, you know, kind of.
Yeah, and also she is a grey area drinking coach, as am I. We train together. And Rachel Welford is of Welford Wellbeing. So she is an amazing healer in meditation, gong bath, Reiki, and does a lot of work within mental health, advocating for mental health. Let's just start by checking in, saying hi to each other. So I suppose let's start with you, Polly. So how's things? You're down in Cornwall, right? So
I am down in Cornwall. Yes, there seems to be a lot of other people down in Cornwall at the moment as well. It's kind of a little bit crazy, isn't there? So lots of people wanting to kind of get out, but no real kind of car park spaces. So lots of confusion. And we were kind of saying before, it's last week, I know a lot of people, you know, kind of really came up against, you know, a brick wall in lockdown and brought up lots and lots of emotions that were going on. And, you know, it's just, we have to remember we are in a pandemic and it's okay not to be okay the whole time, and to really be checking in with yourself, you know, and what you need on a day-to-day basis, because it changes. We're on a spectrum, aren't we? So it's kind of, you're like there 1 minute and then you're there the next minute. So really checking in with what you need. So I've been doing a lot of that as well. You know, massive work regarding boundaries. You know, it's half term, hooray! So no homeschooling, and I cannot tell you how happy that makes me. So yeah, it's kind of boundaries piece as well. It's, you know, speaking your truth and having these really kind of difficult conversations, but, you know, that's burning a desire within you that needs to be kind of, you need to express how we're feeling. And once we've kind of named these emotions, and once we've identified them, we take the sting out of them, we give it somewhere for it to go, so we can process it in a really healthy way. So yeah, I've been preaching a lot of what I help my clients with. You know, we all have to do it ourselves, just because we're kind of coaches and we're on this journey. I think it's really as important to share the ups and the downs and as well, and just be really authentic in it all. So
yeah, so do you want to just share a little bit about your sobriety journey, and like, I guess, what's your main sort of tools for keeping sort of well and sort of, yeah, safe in your sobriety, I suppose?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'd love to. So I had a really traumatic childhood. I survived all forms of abuse, mostly from my alcoholic parents. My mum ended her life when I was 8. And it kind of wasn't really dealt with. It was kind of swept under the carpet, and it was only really acknowledged on kind of Mother's Day and things like that. It was like, oh, take that child out of the class because she hasn't got a mum. So it was just really awkward. So I kind of learned just to suppress everything and cope. And obviously things were very turbulent at home. My dad put me in hospital the last time when I was 14, and then ended up in foster care. At the time I was like, oh no, this is like the end of my world. But actually it was the best thing that happened to me. I finally kind of experienced nurture and being loved, and really thrived in that environment. Kind of, you know, went away to college and really, you know, applied myself, got like student of the year, and, you know, made nice groups and was like, yeah, this is great. And then in my 20s, kind of dealing with the ups and the downs of life, really was a bit like, oh, how the hell do I do this? And it was more kind of, I'd never really dealt with what had happened over my childhood. And I think it's a little bit of a case of monkey see, monkey do. You know, I kind of lent quite heavily in alcohol. And I kind of noticed that I would never feel satisfied. I always wanted more. I would instigate the parties, you know, I was the filler upper, and I just kind of learned to have alcohol in my life as an emotional crutch, just to kind of suppress everything down. Obviously, we know this is not sustainable, and all this stuff sort of started coming out, and I started to kind of unravel it and work with, you know, counsellors. But I kind of felt I was going over the same kind of stuff, and I was very much letting my past control me, you know, going forward. And I know we're kind of sort of talking about mental health regarding this week. So, you know, I made my worst decisions when I was drinking. You know, I tried to take my own life because I was in so much pain and suffering. I didn't know any other ways. I kind of got to a point and I was like, I can't, like, it's not funny really, but like one of my suicide attempts, I couldn't even do it properly, you know, and I was like, oh man, it's like, well, what the hell do I do? You know, I can't do this properly, so where do I go from here? So I kind of evoked in the world of personal development and was like, wow, and kind of signed up to a coach, and I was like, oh my gosh, you know, and was like hooked, you know. I was like asked questions I'd never been asked before, asked about my future, and I was like, God, you know, I just hadn't let myself, I didn't know, you know, you don't know what you don't know. I just wasn't able to kind of project the future without all this pain and suffering and, you know, relying on alcohol and just not wanting to kind of be in this life. So it's kind of over a 5-year period. Then I started taking some coaching qualifications, and I just sort of managed to turn my whole thinking, you know, feeling and behaving around, and was like, my God, why don't other people know about this? You know, why isn't this taught in schools? And so really sort of threw myself very passionately into what I'm doing today. And just every aspect of my life has improved. Some were faster than others. I've been alcohol free since January 17 now. So it's been quite a while. And, you know, I know it sounds really cheesy. I was having this conversation with somebody the other day. It's like, sobriety is the gift that just keeps giving, and at each level it's like, oh wow, there's more, especially through this pandemic, you know, being around the children, balancing kind of work and businesses and homeschooling, and I just kind of, I'm so grateful that I'm not doing it alcohol free. So yeah, that's kind of me kind of keeping it brief today.
Well, thanks so much for sharing with us. And you know, and I mean, we've talked a lot, we know each other personally,
yeah, within
the group, kind of really cheering everyone on, and especially with, you know, we're still fundraising for NACOA, and you know, being sort of an adult child of an alcoholic, I know that was really sort of something really important to you. So if anyone's got any sort of things you want to chip in, raise your hands and I'll pass over to you. But Rachel, just to bring you in now, just to talk a little bit about your kind of, yeah, your mental health journey and how that sort of going alcohol free, reducing, has helped, you know, and that kind of side of things, and a little bit about, I suppose, because there's such a link between mental health and alcohol, you know, how you got better, I suppose, you know, because obviously I know your story too.
Yeah, so firstly, thank you all for having me on. It's great to be here. My story, quite hard, isn't it, to condense everything into a short story, but essentially in 2014 my life just changed forever. So I went from living essentially my kind of, you know, dream life. I was top of my career, I'd been headhunted for my last 3 roles, I was out partying pretty much like 4 or 5 nights a week with like VIP free bar, all that kind of stuff within my job. So I just thought I was absolutely like living the pinnacle of London life, you know, earning all right money, kind of not really having too many worries, traveling quite a lot, going on holidays, traveling with work. So I got to go snowboarding, you know, a lot as part of my job, which is pretty sweet. You know, I had to like go to, you know, snowboarding in France and get paid for it, snowboarding in America, get paid for it. It was all pretty awesome until pretty much overnight everything came crashing down. And yeah, there was a fateful day in 2014 where I was sat at my desk and I just had to leave the office because I thought I'm going to cry again, and I just sat on this bench and I just cried and cried and cried, and I couldn't stop crying. And I went home and cried some more, and then I essentially called in work sick 3 days in a row, saying I, you know, had kind of like flu or something, which wasn't true. I just couldn't stop crying. And then after 72 hours of solid crying and barely any sleep, I called my mum and was just like, something's wrong with me. Don't know what's wrong with me. And freaked out. And then that was the beginning of 3 years of hell, basically. So I spent 3 years rehabilitating myself from this complete and utter mental breakdown, and just was bedridden for about 3 or 4 months. I was very lucky that my parents were in a position to scoop me up and look after me, because I don't know how I would have survived without that safety net. I was that ill. I didn't get out of bed. I couldn't brush my teeth. It was really, really, really bad. And then probably followed a similar route to anyone else in here that may have experienced a complete burnout, mental breakdown, whatever you want to call it, and was medicated, kept trying different medications, couldn't find the right ones, was suicidal, you know, a lot of the time, took attempts on my life. It was just a really awful time. And I remember one day, as part of that, just sitting in my bed and in my sort of like childhood bedroom back at home in my 30s, thinking like, oh my God, you know, like when you're a kid, you think, by the time I'm 30, I'm going to be like married and have children and a big house and loads of money. And then you're like sat in your parents' house crying with depression, like, what the hell happened here? So yeah, I spent the next 3 years essentially piecing everything back together, trying to get back to work. And part of piecing everything back together was getting back to drinking, because I stopped drinking as part of my healing process from depression, because I'd read that alcohol was a depressant. And I thought, well, it's pretty crazy if you're trying to heal depression to drink something that you know is going to be a depressant. But part of my healing process was kind of getting back to normal, which for me meant, you know, going back to a very highly stressful sales job, and getting back to going out Friday, coming home Sunday. You know? And as soon as I started feeling better, I was using practices like EFT, I was going to talk therapy, I'd given up drinking, I changed my diet, I was exercising, all these different kinds of things, journaling. I was pretty much trying anything and everything, like a pick and mix of self-development, to try and work out what worked and how I could overcome. And every time I went back to drinking, I started to notice, because I hadn't drank in such a long time, I think I didn't drink for about 18 months whilst I was in my recovery from depression and anxiety. And that wasn't really like a conscious choice of like, oh, I'm going to stop drinking. It was just in my head like a pause, you know, like, oh, I'm just going to stop drinking until I'm better, and then I'll get back to normal. And I think that language as well is really interesting, because since I have become alcohol free, I do think, why is it normal? You know, like getting back to normal drinking, whereas actually normal should be without drink, and drink should be like a, I don't know, an addition or something. But like, it seems that, at least in Britain anyway, and in my circles, my family are quite big drinkers, all my friends are big drinkers even now. You know, it's quite strange to be alcohol free. That's not the norm. And so I kept going back to it, and every time I went back to it, I found my anxiety flared up, my negative inner voice that, you know, tells me I'm fat and stupid and disgusting and that nobody wants me around and I'm not interesting, and all that kind of crap that your little inner critic tells you that's just not true, would flare up again. And I just kept noticing this pattern between, you know, when I would have a drink and the kind of 2 or 3 weeks after I'd have a drink, and how I felt compared to if I wasn't drinking, and how I felt. And over time, it just became a bit of a no-brainer for me. It wasn't, you know, I guess I was quite lucky in a sense. I don't think I suffer with addiction. I don't think I, you know, I didn't struggle to give up alcohol. It was just kind of, alcohol makes me feel depressed and anxious, so I'm not going to do it anymore. And there have been occasions, and I'm not completely alcohol free. I'm like 99.9% alcohol free. I don't drink I don't know, I might, you know, I might occasionally decide, and this is the thing where I think it's different for me maybe than other people that are dealing with addiction or other types of problems with alcohol, is that, you know, on the odd occasion, I can't even remember the last time I did this though, I think it was New Year's Eve, I might think, oh, actually, I choose tonight to have a glass of something. But again, it just becomes so almost like pointless, because I just love my life anyway. I still go to parties, I still go to raves, you know, and I'm there with my Diet Coke or my soda water, and I'm having a really good time. And I think what was interesting for me was one of the only times I really missed alcohol, and I've noticed that in lockdown. I haven't drank at all, obviously, in lockdown. I'm super grateful for my sobriety in lockdown. Is that I only miss it when I'm pissed off, or if I'm upset, or if I want to numb something out. That I don't miss it when I'm out with my friends, and, you know, I can watch all my mates get drunk. It doesn't really bother me. You know, they might start getting annoying when they put their arms around you and shout in your ear and repeat themselves, but, you know, whatever, it doesn't really bother me. But when I do miss it is like, and there have been the odd occasion where I've sat in lockdown and I'm in my flat by myself. People I normally live with have both gone away for lockdown. So, you know, there's been a couple of evenings where I've thought, I really want a glass of red wine. And then I've thought, why are you thinking about red wine? You know, I get curious about it now. I'm not even annoyed or upset. I just get curious. I'm like, oh, okay, why do you want red wine? And I realise it's because I'm lonely, or because I'm angry, or because I'm sad, and I want to block it out. And I'm like, that's not okay. That's not when to use that tool, you know, at all. So yeah, I guess that's kind of my journey. And then Welford Wellbeing came about because I felt so freaking good. I've never felt this good in my whole life. And I was like, whoa, how's it taken me like 30 plus years to realise that I had anxiety and depression, and that actually you don't have to be medicated to deal with it. There's multiple different healing paths to healing, and, you know, you're way, way, way more empowered than you realise. But other people don't want you to know that. So the more that you can tune into your power, and you're like, oh yeah, that's who I really am at my core, underneath alcohol, underneath who I pretend to be socially or to my family or whatever, but you can just really be your true self. There's real power in that, and that's what I wanted to share with the world, really.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's really, I mean, I would just say, like, from my experience, I suppose it's like you're really lucky that you had that journey of kind of mental mindfulness to be able to sit and go and look at it and go, you know what, I'm not going down that path with alcohol.
100% think meditation played a huge part in me deciding to give up alcohol, because that level of awareness that you get from meditation, eventually you can't ignore it. You can't ignore the fact that there's this direct correlation between when you have a drink and when you feel that your mental health's dipping. It's just, it's so glaringly obvious, and you just, I don't know, in my opinion, I don't want to feel like shit, you know. I want to spend my life feeling good and happy and like buzzing and full of energy. I don't want to spend my life hungover in bed eating Dominoes, binge watching Netflix, feeling sorry for myself. It's just not how I want to spend my time anymore. And I think that, like you say, that self-awareness, once that comes, you can't really hide from it.
Kate, you had your hand up. I'll pass over to you.
Yeah, thank you. It's so lovely to kind of hear your stories, and thank you for that. And sorry, I was making notes as you were speaking. I'm not like going to store information. It was just that I didn't want to miss any points. But there's something that's been twinkling away for me this week, and something about what you've both said has piqued it again. And it's about sort of authenticity, and something to do with mental health and being connected with people. And the reason is, I was just listening to you both. I was looking at your kind of beautiful faces and your articulate way you express yourself, and your charisma, and just, you would never know that you've had the trauma, the upset, the healing, the kind of, you know, that those feelings of kind of self-hatred, you know. And that thing about, you know, once we start telling our stories authentically, and it's like, okay, me too, that moment, isn't it? And that other people kind of go, yeah, shit, I'm struggling too, or I have this pain, or I have this. And just how, like, I'm so grateful that we've got this sober community, that people like you are brave enough to tell your stories. And that sort of, yeah, that authenticity. And I've been thinking about a lot this week about how when we choose to take those paths which lead us to our authenticness and are able to talk about it, how then it increases our feelings of being connected with each other, and then that makes us feel better as well. And I've seen little bits of that all over this week in myself, with friends, with what you're doing as well. Yeah, so that's just what I wanted to say. I just wanted to say thank you before we kind of moved on, you know.
Yeah, Lisa?
I just wanted to ask Rachel, really, because meditation has been a huge part of my sobriety as well, especially in the early days. There was so much going on with marriage breakdown, children going absolutely wild. For me, it was the only time that I learned to switch off, but it massively made my life just better. Now, I'm not articulate enough to explain to somebody why. So I really want you to do that for people. I know a lot of people say to me, I can't meditate. And for me, it was somebody said to me, like, you don't have to shut everything off. It's not about that. And I always wanted to be a meditating type of person, but I never thought I could do it either. But I knew I'd be good at it if I could. So for people that don't know anything about it or how it can help, can you explain a little bit more?
I'd love
me
to. Yeah.
Waffling.
One of my favourite subjects to talk about, I think, firstly, is exactly what you said. I actually have written a course called Meditation Made Simple, because after I'd been meditating for about 6 years, I thought, this is going to be really harsh, right? You know, like on all the Buddhists and all the monks and all the people who've been doing it for millennia. I didn't like the way it was taught. I think there's a lot of like, I'm sorry, and for anyone that gets offended by swearing, I'm going to really try not to swear today, but I struggle.
Hello.
I'm from a fishing village, man. I've got a potty mouth, but I think there's a lot of shit around meditation. It drives me mad. It's like sold as this kind of like, you know, you need to be really like calm and really like spiritual, or like, you know, you're going to be aiming to be enlightened, and unless you can switch off all your mind and all your thoughts, then you're doing it wrong. And if you're doing it wrong, it's because you're wrong, not because the practice is wrong. And I'm like, do you know what? F you, you know, like, no, that isn't true. Like, they don't teach the layers of meditation. They don't teach that there's 4 layers and that you can learn it, and it's like learning the piano and it's a learned skill. The way it's put across is like, you just sit down and you focus on your breath, and then suddenly, like magic, all the thoughts go away. And it's like, mate, if you've had trauma, like, I know a lot of us here have had similar traumas and similar like horrors of life that we might have experienced. Sitting in meditation is no joke. It can be really difficult to sit with difficult emotions and things that we've suppressed for years and years and years. But when you know how to do it properly, when it's taught in a way that makes you go, I'm not doing it wrong. Like, if my mind keeps running off and I just go, oh, you know, there's a thought, oh well, back to the breath. There's another thought, oh well, back to the breath. Oh, here's a difficult emotion. Oh, I think I'm going to cry. That's okay, I'm going to cry, but I'm going to focus on my breath. And then come out of that and go, oh, I just meditated. And that was a meditation. Whereas in the historic sense of the way it's shown, you'd think that you didn't meditate properly, you'd done it wrong. So that's what I think, is just people aren't really taught it properly. So for me, meditation is not about emptying the mind at all. It's about focusing the mind, which is a very, very different practice. And when you can learn how to refocus the mind and allow whatever else is there to just carry on as is, eventually all the stuff that is as is disappears. So the way that I like to explain it to people is, if you can think of a hurricane or a tornado, right? Huge tornado churning everything up in its path, right? From the outside, if you see the tornado coming, you're like, oh my God, this is a massive tornado. And it's like sheds in there and a cow swirling around, and probably like Dorothy and all the Wizard of Oz crew hanging out in this tornado. But if you were in the centre of the tornado, you wouldn't even know that that storm was happening. Because at the eye of the storm, there is always absolute stillness and complete peace. And so this is how I explain meditation to people, is you are the eye of the storm, and everyone has that ability within them. You're the eye of the storm, and the chaos in your life and the trauma and all that like horror stuff can spin around the edge as much as it wants. But you're in the middle with this little buffer between you and the chaos, and so then you're just sort of wandering around, and the chaos can carry on as it likes, but you're in the center of the storm then with the meditation. And so, you know, that's how I personally like to think of meditation, is that you're not changing your life or the world or anything actively. It's that as you refocus on one thing, ideally the breath, or maybe if you're doing a candle gazing meditation, you might be focusing on a candle, or with sound meditation, you focus on a sound, but you're refocusing, which is a very different practice. And to give yourself the time and space to learn that practice. It's meditation practice, not meditation perfect. You're not going to sit there and be perfect at something the first time you do it. And I think the way it's taught is as if running, say if you wanted to get into running, and you've never ran before in your life, and you turn up at a class and they go, today we're going to run a marathon, and you go, what? I never ran before. And they go, yeah, 24 miles or nothing. And you're like, but I don't know if I can do 24 miles. You know, you're going to feel completely overwhelmed. Whereas if they said, okay, well, today we're going to run for, you know, 30 seconds, and then we're going to walk for a bit, and then we're going to run for another 30 seconds. You know, if you practice like that over a period of time, you might be able to run a marathon. Or you might choose not to. You might not want to run a marathon after you've done 5k. You might be like, that's enough. And I think meditation is very, very much similar. You know, just practice where you are, accept where you are with your practice, and just keep at it. And then eventually you will get these clarity moments where you go, oh my God, this is so nice, that the empty mind and everything else. But yeah, that's, I don't know if that was particularly articulate, but that's how I look at meditation.
It was better than what I just said, I think.
Rachel,
oh sorry, go on.
So no, I was going to say, I did one of your courses, one of your ones that you do on the Facebook. I think it was Zen in 10.
Zen in 10.
It was amazing, and it made me laugh so much because you said on one of these, so Rach did this great course, and it was like you just incrementally did it over every day, you just upped it by a minute. And you said, imagine your mind is like an Andrex puppy. And I love this metaphor. And it's chasing after the loo rolls, and the loo rolls are all running away from you. And then, so you call the Andrex puppy back, and then you went, you're not going to hit the puppy. Are you? You're not going to swear at the puppy and tell it it's shit. You're going to be kind to the puppy. And I was like, that was such a good analogy, that, you know, to practice with kindness. But that made me laugh. Sorry,
I've literally just finished making the Zen in 10 into a video challenge so that people can do it in their own time. Because what I was finding was people couldn't you know, necessarily log on at the same time, and they were struggling to keep up with it. So I've actually now just recorded it as a video course, and it's free. So I'm just really passionate about helping people meditate. So if anyone, I don't know how it works on here with comments or whatever, but if anyone wants a link to that, then I think it will be going live imminently, the next couple of days. So let me know how to get hold of people, and I can send a link out and they can sign up.
Yeah, we'll put it in the
link. That's fantastic.
And I just wanted to kind of like bring it back in terms of kind of you know, the brain and your nervous system, and kind of, so, you know, when people are struggling with triggers and like they're like, whoa, like fuck, you know, I'm gonna drink because like everything's got too much, and you know, I'm really overwhelmed. Where do these practices sit? You know, why are they so useful, basically? Because, you know, they are, I mean, but why do they have such an impact in kind of bringing yourself back to yourself and helping in sobriety? I don't know if Polly, if you can answer that.
Yeah, completely, agreeing with what Rachel's saying as well, and Lisa as well. Meditation is a practice, isn't it? I can remember getting so frustrated at the beginning, kind of going, I can't do it. I thought you had to shut all your thoughts down, and then learning that actually it's like having the awareness of a thought. Oh, it's just a thought, kind of let it go. And we have like 70,000 thoughts a day, and 90% of them are on repeat. So if you're not aware of your thoughts, how are you going to ever change them? So it's a really, and the hardest thing, drinking takes you out of your head, doesn't it? So it eliminates that. And the thoughts that you have, my self-talk was horrendous. It was toxic. I would have got arrested if I'd spoken to somebody else the way that I spoke to in my own head. And hearing that stuff and sitting and being quiet with that stuff, it's like, why would you do that? So it's hard, and it's skill, and it's a practice. But as with all muscles, if you go to the gym, you go in, you do an exercise class, you work out, you come out, you're not a size 8, it's like, I want my money back. So it doesn't work. So it's a muscle that we can't see, and we don't necessarily get instant tangible results for it. So we have to keep practicing. You have to take a leap of faith and keep practicing and practicing and practicing, which I have done as well along the process. And I think, kind of touching on what Kate said earlier, it's that it's okay to be a perfectly imperfect human. It's, when you're riddled with guilt and shame and self-hate, it's, that kind of, your self-esteem is low, your confidence is low, you can't do anything. It's this self-fulfilling prophecy that you're creating in your life. So at some point you need to break that pattern and start to change a part of it. And the most powerful kind of part is the thoughts, bearing in mind they're on this negative 90% kind of loop as well. And by using the power of meditation and this practice, you're bringing your attention to your thoughts, but letting your thoughts go, and knowing really, really importantly that you are not your thoughts. It is just a thought. We have the choice whether we engage with that thought or whether we don't. So, and that kind of links into lots of affirmations as well, affirmations, mantras, however you kind of want to work them. And yeah, that helps. As with all things, it's the integrity. Each day you're not drinking, each day you're doing a meditation practice, you feel good about yourself. You're starting to do the things that you said you were going to do. So that builds up your self-respect, your relationship with yourself, all the opposite of what, not doing these kind of healthy coping mechanisms. We take alcohol out of our life, we need to replace something else because we were filling the void with alcohol. Take that away, you've still got a void. It's a journey, it's a healing process. So by doing that as well. So even a couple of minutes a day at the beginning is better than nothing at all, and my husband and I kind of differ on this. He doesn't sit and meditate, but he runs, and he can't think about anything else apart from his football, and there's so many different ways to meditate. It's not all sitting down and it's you find the way that works for you, and that's a case of trial and error. But if you don't try, you're not going to know.
I want to bring the boys in now. Talking a little bit about your kind of mental health and practices that you use to kind of keep well. Simon, I know that you meditate. Can you talk a little bit about that, and then we'll go to Dave and William?
Yeah, I don't meditate as much as I should actually. I was just thinking when you were first speaking about, you sort of said, oh, how's your week been? And I was like, oh, actually, all I've done is work. I think to get through the pandemic, I've just thrown myself into working, and I've been working like literally, 6:30 in the morning through till 7-8 o'clock at night. And I've just sort of realised in that moment, actually, I've let that slide a bit. I should be meditating more because that's not healthy, and I recognise that. So I think that actually taking stock and just checking in on yourself, exactly like we said, which I literally was just doing, to say, you're overdoing it. You're going to burn yourself out if you do that. You can't just work all the time. But my meditation, I wouldn't put myself out there as some kind of meditation guru. I use one of the popular meditation apps when I do meditate, which was actually fairly regularly until recently. I just do a sort of 10-minute morning meditation, which is kind of bite-sized, but it is better than nothing. And my experience was the same. The first couple of times I did it, there were thoughts all over the place, and I did feel like, my God, I'm not very good at this. And it isn't a competition; it is a practice. And but after a few attempts at it, I definitely was able to empty my head of thoughts and stay focused on the breath. And it really does help me. And I often, when I've got time, there's some really awesome meditations, even on YouTube. I will find if I've got longer, a half-hour one or a 40-minute one, or if I'm feeling anxious, I'll find one specific for anxiety or whatever it is that's kind of bothering me at that time. So yeah, it does play a big part in my life, and I need to get back on it.
And what do you think the sort of from a sober perspective, what do you think the positive things that it gave you were?
I think it's definitely one for the sober toolbox, without a doubt, because when I first quit, so much of it is around managing thoughts and learning to sit with uncomfortable feelings, and that really, really helped me. I mean, I use the Calm app. Some people use Headspace, and I know there's other ones as well, but it's definitely one for people to check out and see if it fits. But the biggest thing is to actually stick with it, rather than just give it one try and then, actually my head was full of thoughts, so I'm not very good at this, because that's not the case. And actually that's, like I think Rachel said, that's okay. It might be Polly who said it, but it's okay if your head's full of thoughts. Just acknowledge that, my head's full of thoughts, but back to the breath. More thoughts, back to the breath. That's okay. Sometimes I have it. Sometimes like a messy meditation where there's just thoughts and stuff. You just can't silence it. The worst thing to do is try and fight it. But the only thing I guess is I often encounter people who are having really, really strong cravings, to the point where they're in tears and emotional. And I was actually going to ask either Rachel or Polly, maybe we can come to it in a minute if you're going to go around Dave and William, but about actually being able to make the transition from, I'm in the middle of the tornado, for example, as Rachel described it. Well, actually, I'm not in the middle of the tornado. The damn thing's lifted me up off the floor, and I'm in the bit with the sheds and all the rest of it. Actually, being able to then make that move, instead of going and getting a drink, to actually going to do a meditation or turn into a tactic, because that is almost the bit. There's that moment of, do I take a drink? Do I go and use one of my tools? And it can be overwhelming. So I think for me, meditation was great in just generally calming me down. And when I was having thoughts that weren't like massively overwhelming, but there were times when I struggled where it was getting overwhelming, and I was just laying on my bedroom floor feeling sorry for myself, and I just wouldn't even bother going to do a meditation. So I think there's that learning to be able to pause and actually step into a healthy tactic is really important as well, and it's a challenge that a lot of people face.
Yeah, I'll come back to that. So I'll go around to Dave and William. So Dave, like in terms of your mental health, obviously that's been part of the story, and we've talked about how that's impacted on your drinking. What do you do now to kind of keep well? I mean, I'll hand up, I don't meditate myself, so that's one that's not on my toolkit, but I find it too difficult at the moment. But for you, what do you?
Firstly, I've been looking at Rachel and Simon, and I'm just wondering what Simon would look like with your headgear on, Rachel.
Oh my God, I'd love that.
I think it would be all right.
Why aren't you wondering how you would look with it, Dave?
Well, I've got to do something.
Can't we do something? Can't we do?
Literally, I've used the strongest gel to hold this down, because otherwise it's like the Hair Bear punch. Do you know what I mean? But on a serious note, I don't know if anyone's seen my Instagram over the last couple of days, but I've been talking about the Tony Slattery documentary, and I grew up with him, and not with him, but watching him on the telly. And when I saw the documentary, it really triggered me. It really touched me, because he's not that much older than me. And I was heading that way, you know, and I did a post last night, and then I woke up this morning, I felt really, really down, and I was trying to work out why. And it, you know, I said to Em today that I'm not in the mood for anything today. I just don't want to have anything to do with parenting. I just don't want to feel like I can have any responsibility today, because I think it's really important to sit with my feelings on it, because it feels quite deep for me. Because to say, I mean, I had quite a reaction last night about it, but to see him, how he was struggling with his mental health, really upset me, you know, and it reminded me of when a couple of years ago when I sort of went AWOL and I ended up in Eastbourne, and I was I went mad, actually. I didn't book in anywhere to stay. I just decided to go on a huge 4-day bender, and I was buying litres of vodka, sleeping on the beach. And I don't know how I survived it, really. And I think it's really, really important to almost be a little bit selfish when you're feeling like that, and say to yourself, do you know what? I just need some time and space to work it out and sit with these feelings. Because if I now was in there and the kids are jumping all over me, I'll be neglecting myself then, and there'll be some form of backlash later on. So I think that's really important for me, certainly, to acknowledge how I'm feeling and to actually self-nurture myself and self-love, and hopefully I can come out of that. But I've actually reached out as well to someone that's worked on the show, because I feel like I want to reach out to him on some level, because he made me feel really, really sad on a deep level, you know. Acknowledge your own feelings is a really important thing to do, actually. That's my say.
Yeah. And
is it something you've done before that, Dave, or is that just since sobriety that you've kind of thought?
It's probably since sobriety, because before I just get drunk.
Yeah.
You know, I would, as Tony said, the emotional blunting. You know, you know, I would just have these feelings, and then I'll go, do you know, I'm just going to have a drink. I never used to think about anything, but I did, but in a really sort of skewed way, you know. It was like a warped way. And then I wake up in the morning really anxious and that, but then I'd think, well, do you know what, I can have a drink later on, and that sort of got me through. But as you all know, when you give up drinking, all of a sudden it's like, bang, whoa, what are all these feelings, you know? But I've learned how to deal with them now, where before I didn't know. And I used to just try and carry on and be proactive and whatever. But I've talked to him loads of times. And I think when you first give up drinking, you feel like you're being a bit selfish, because you've already put them through enough. If you've got a partner who's brought up you drinking, it's almost like, oh God, I've got to make up for it now, and I've got to be this or that. But I think you have to be kind of selfish in the beginning to a certain extent to look after yourself, because you've got to heal yourself first.
Well, yeah, because otherwise you're going to be back in the same position you were before, you know. So yeah, it's that sort of self-advocacy of like, I have needs, and I need to look after myself for the better of the greater good for everyone.
And you can become the victim as well, because if you're sacrificing your feelings and that, and I better do that, and all of a sudden you're the victim, and then that can bite you as well. So I think it's really important.
Yeah, that resentment.
Yeah.
Someone's just asked Dave, what was the documentary and where can you see it?
It was on BBC Two, Horizon, and you can get it on catch up. And I think it's called What Happened to Tony Slattery. So when I did my post last night, I had a couple of people say to me, I think it's really unkind you've put that picture on. I mean, that literally, it was a 1% criticism. And it was, I didn't put it on to ridicule him or whatever. It was, he did this documentary to show other people how his mental health was affected by cocaine, alcohol and bipolar. And it come up in the programme about child abuse as well. And I thought he's so brave to do it. And I know for a fact I've had such a reaction on my Instagram with people saying how it's touched them as well. So I just love him for doing it, for being so honest. And his partner Mark is amazing. You know, he stood by him for 37 years, I think, and it's just such a brilliant. I just recommend this to anyone to watch. You know, it's really, I think you can tell by my voice that it's touched me on a deep level, and you know, I'm going to watch it again tonight, actually.
You know, I love that you said, Dave, is that I love him. You know, it's like we live in so much stigma about addiction, and it's like, oh, you know, they're so bad. Rather, you know, we have this whole story about this, and it's like, just to be like, I love him and he's suffering. You know, that's a really sort of special thing. You know, and I think for everyone that's listening, it's like we're all in this together. You know, and
yeah,
there is no shame that in that struggle. Just wanted
I
to,
think
yeah, go on.
also it's like it's easy not to like someone as well, to judge someone, but it just highlights what an illness it is, you know, because when I was drinking, I mean, I was drinking a litre of vodka a night, but that was after a few beers as well, you know, and I was, you know, I was functioning. I was going to work. I run my own business and that. And no one could believe it after that. Even my dad said the other day, I had absolutely no idea. It doesn't make you like a bad person, or do you know what I mean? I hate that stigma around it, that you're wrong or well, you're just an alcoholic or something like that. And it goes to show that we're just normal people that have been affected by this terrible illness, you know, and I don't know, it's touched me to the extent that I really, really hope he reaches out back to me, you know, because I just want to meet him and I want to give him a big hug, and I really do. Yeah. So if anyone wants to watch it, it's beautiful, you know.
I'm going to watch that now tonight.
Yeah, I can't in France, but I will seek it out.
Yeah, someone just asked.
I can't in my mental health.
Yeah.
And then Kate, well, that's not possible tonight.
Yeah, we wanted to bring you in, just you know, your sort of take on mental health recovery and alcohol use. You know, tell us a little bit about that for you and how you think people, yeah, your reflection on the conversation we've had, I guess.
So I feel a bit out of my depth, to be honest, because I haven't really done meditation or anything. But going back to what Polly was saying, I do go running, and one of the things I was just, funny enough, just thinking about now is I always try and go on the same route, because I don't like concentrating on where I'm going. I like to just switch off. So if I'm doing the same run all the time, I'm not concentrating on anything, and that's the kind of the thing I like about running. So I suppose that's something kind of akin to it. But I suppose the other thing I've been doing, being locked down at home, I've been getting out into the garden and gardening and just, but I suppose it's anything that you can kind of just switch off from what's going on around you. Which, yeah, I mean, that works for me. I don't have much more to say, I'm afraid.
It's being more mindful, isn't it, William? I think just being mindful. You don't have to meditate. It's just, you know, I remember my mum saying to me, you can be mindful by washing the dishes, just and drying them. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but you can, can't you?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and a lot of people like recommend tidying the house and stuff, and I do that. I do find it really cathartic tidying up. Just like hoovering, and I don't know. Something about hoovering,
I love a good tidy.
It's a bit weird.
Holly, you've got something to add?
Just that, you know, meditation might not be for everybody, but it's things like making your self-care like non-negotiable, and exactly like Dave was saying, it's really checking in and doing what you feel you need to do on a day-to-day basis. You know, getting outside into big open spaces is often something that helps me get into perspective as well. It's, you know, standing beneath a massive great tree and you realize kind of how little you are in all of this and how things will pass as well. Same down onto the beach. There's a lot of uncertainty at the moment, but if you can get into environments where there's certainty, you know, it's like the tide comes in and out every day. You know, the birds, I've got swallows nesting on my cabin. It's like, you know, they're busy kind of feeding their chicks. It's looking around kind of outside you would give you quite a lot of comfort. So it's things like kind of getting outside, self-care, what works for you, and also checking in with your energy as well. What drains your energy, but what equally kind of ignites you and gives you passion, and making sure you're doing those things and fun. Like, you know, getting in touch with like your inner child and going out and having some fun as well. Adulting can be really serious sometimes, and I think, you know, a lot of people kind of lean into drinking because it's the way that they let their hair down, or they let go of stress and worry, and, you know, they kind of can almost access that inner child state. Well, kind of how about playing with that, being playful and mindful, and setting about doing things with intention as well. But yeah, self-care is phenomenal, you know, and I think catching, like sort of Simon was saying, it's, you know, he's not sort of meditating so much, but catching yourself back here rather than when you're at that stage of kind of like, oh God, I've just been working so much. It's trying to do those things on a day-to-day basis to check in, to keep yourself at a level where you've got more resilience.
One thing I
Give
did.
yourself your time. Sorry, go
on. Do you want to go, Lisa? Sorry.
No, you go.
Listen, I'm the only one who's putting my hand up.
Nobody
here.
can see you.
I can't see your hand.
Oh,
I have to keep
I've been
messaging
sitting
Mandy.
here
It's got a hand
with my
up.
hand up for half
Will you
bloody
go, Kate?
hour. All right, I will.
Go on then.
Because otherwise I'm going to get triggered, and then you better watch out, all of you. No, actually, I am really angry today. And I went, honest to God, I went out. I knew what it was. You know, we were talking the other week about I want to be with people, but I also want to be left alone all at the same time. Like, I'm allergic to everyone, but I'm really needy all at the same time. And it's like, I'd gone, like Polly was saying, I'd gone out of my resilient zone. I was already starting to come up. And I notice it now physically. So like, if I can get it out, if I can just identify what the physicality is with it and shift it, it helps. But I didn't know. So anyway, this took me, I went into the woods with my husband and my daughter. I swore in front of my daughter because my husband was not saying the things that I wanted him to say and being sensitive. He was just winding me up. And then he was like, right, you need to have a word with yourself and have a moment. And I was like, that's fine. Now you can do that. And now you're having a go. And now I'm upset and it's not okay. And what about me? Right. And then I sort of started walking, and then I started crying. And then my daughter was like, are you all right, Mum? And I said, yeah, look, I'm really sorry. Sometimes it's not easy to ask for what you need when you're already kind of upset. And she went, well, I'm sorry I was a bit mean to you in the car then. And I was like, well, I'm sorry that I said that I just wanted adult time in front of you. Right? She's only 9, bless her. And then we went into the woods, and I was just like, actually, you know what? I'm feeling really angry. I just need to hit something. So my husband gave me a stick. So I'm there bashing it on the ground. And I was going, ah, like really yelling, to the point where we saw some people fishing, right, over the other side of the lake. And I was like, oh no, we need to tone it down a bit. And then my daughter was banging as well with this stick, just going, rah! And anyway, then we felt a bit better. And it was like, well, sometimes you need to do what you need to do. Like, meditation cut it for me at that point. I'd done all the swearing there. I'd done the swearing. I'd done the, you know, I like to pride myself on being a mum who's just like kind of very, you know, I'm all right and I'm not being inappropriate and I'm not, you know, making my children look after me. And I was just all over the shop. So anyway, I don't know why I had to say that. I think it was, feeling it in your body and catching yourself before you go into that. And sometimes it's, you need to get it out, don't you? I was like, I need to shake it. And the other thing I was going to say, sorry, just on the mindfulness thing, there's an amazing, I think, Mandy, you sent it to me, on the Rich Roll podcast with Dr. Judd Brewer. He has studied about, like, he's like a thought leader, expert, rah-de-rah, about mindfulness and its treatment on addiction in lots of his treatment centres, with amazing results because of that. Staying calm in your nervous system, training the prefrontal cortex to actually put the brakes on and feel calm so that you can generate that next option of, I'm not going to have a drink. You know, we were talking about putting those brakes on and just stopping. So I could have probably done with listening to that today before I dropped a bomb.
I think
Anyway.
that's really healthy though, Kate.
Sorry?
I think that's really healthy what you've done, and I think actually what you're teaching your daughter there
Oh.
at 9 years old is that it's acceptable to be angry, and it's acceptable to process your anger in a healthy way. You know, swearing and hitting a stick on the floor is a healthier way of processing anger than going on a 3-day bender because you've suppressed it for 15 years. Or
Yes,
than
Dave.
losing,
No,
you know,
sorry.
losing your crap at your partner.
Me or your husband?
Yeah.
Mm.
No,
But, you know,
thank you.
I think that's actually a really healthy way, and that's one of the things I teach a lot of my clients that are dealing with anger. I suppressed anger from the age of 15, and it's been a very interesting relationship trying to reconnect with it. I don't even notice when I'm angry, barely, because I've suppressed it so well. And sometimes I'll like wake up and, you know, in the middle of something and think, oh, you're angry, that's what's going on. And it's kind of like, ooh, you're mad. and then I need to, and anger's an emotion that needs to be moved. You know, you've
Yes,
got to
it
move
does. Damn right. It needs to go somewhere, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Otherwise it gets stuck in the body. So I think what you did was actually perfect.
Yeah, William, this is where you can come in.
Thank you.
How do you explain that?
I don't know that I can.
Want to go? Do you want to?
It was meditating.
Dave, you said it already.
Do you want to carry on
That's
playing
a bloody
FIFA in your gaming chair, or do you?
Can I just say as well, you know, when you said about apologising for saying that you wanted adult time, I think this is something that I actually saw on your M's Instagram, Dave, and she'd put like a sign up saying, "What? Can you remember this?" She'd put a sign up, and I think it's just saying it's all right. You know, I still love you.
Yeah, was that on the door?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. It's like you all need your own space, and like I'm their stepdad, right? But we got this lovely room upstairs. It's like a Mr. and Mrs. Smith hotel. It's got everything in it, right? And I get the hump when they just come in, because that is to me our own private space, and it's not like we're leaping about all over the bed. It's more like no, but it's more like that is our private space, and they just walk in and say, "Oh no," and it really does my head in, because this office where I am now. So Polly, you say that's your cabin. This is mine. I painted the wall, and I've got a look at that Tracy Emin picture and my new plant. Well, I was jealous of Kate. But what I'm trying to say is, this is my space, right? And I won't let them in here, because we all need that headspace space, if that makes sense. I don't know why I said that. What was the question? Oh, yeah. About the thing on the door, because it's a gentle reminder of saying, keep out, basically, but in a loving way.
Yeah.
And it's exacerbated at the moment because of lockdown, isn't it? And it's like, you know, I did explain it to her. I was like, you know, just like sometimes you just need to play or you need kid space. It's like, we do. So, you know.
Yeah.
And actually, you become like a better version of yourself as well, don't you? It's kind of like by, you know, meeting your needs, you are more present, you're more able to be what people want you to be as well. And that's okay.
So I want to go back to Simon's question before we go to the questions in the Facebook group. So I believe the question was, you know, if you're in the storm, so like you're massively triggered, or you're like, you know, really kind of, what techniques, is that right, Simon? What techniques can you bring yourself out to give yourself that time to pause?
Yeah, totally. It just really, I think something that comes up time and time again, it's, you know, when I'm coaching people, for example, that, you know, it's all very well in the calmness of mid-morning talking about meditation, etc. But when you're in the middle of a massive craving, I wondered if Polly or Rachel might have any tips around how to actually be able to pause and go and take the healthy route rather than reach for the drink.
Yeah, definitely. So when you've reached that point, I'd say you've gone too far. So what you wanted, lots happened before you've got to that point. So there's lots of cues and triggers that you potentially miss. So it's looking back starting to be like that private detective. I do this with my clients a lot. You know, start to be a private detective of your own life. So what has happened, you know, that maybe you've missed, or you've been triggered, or something's flared up, you know, each time, like, it's great for reflection and looking back and pulling the gold out as well. And then you start to kind of formulate strategies, plans, coping mechanisms, kind of going forward. And when you are in that space, it's acknowledging it and knowing that it's okay. I've got a really big, like, visual list of all my reasons why. So go back and look at those, because that will hopefully evoke an emotion that's potentially stronger than the one that you're feeling at the moment, and using these different parts of the brain to your advantage, because you're in that you know, primitive toddler type mindset. It's like, I want it now, I want instant gratification. So, you know, giving that what it needs, and what the work that hopefully you've done before to get strong foundations. Move your body. You know, it's kind of like it's stuck in your body, it sounds like. So move your body, get up, change your environment, go out, do jumping jacks, run around the garden. You know, it might feel completely crazy, but actually moving it and doing something else, breaking your state, you know, using your physiology to help you here. Knowing that it's probably going to only last for 10 minutes, you know, and when you say 10 minutes, that's not actually a long time for a craving or a trigger. So lots of kind of, yes, I don't know about Rachel. What would Rachel like to add to that?
Yeah, I totally echo what you say there, Polly. I think they're really awesome tips. I think definitely what I would recommend is that you have, like, it's difficult for me with cravings because I never really had alcohol cravings per se, but what I can liken it to is with my anxiety or my mental health. You know, like, I have to, if I'm catching that when I'm already in bed for 2 days with my depression, it's much harder for me to get out of it than if I've caught it, you know, like at the moment. Nobody would probably know watching me on this live right now, I'm in a dip in my mental health. Like, my depression is, you know, I always use a car analogy. Like, I like to be driving the car of my life. Do you know what I mean? And my mental health, I may never get rid of it. Who knows? I think I can cure myself, but, you know, whatever. As long as it's in the boot of the car, it doesn't bother me. It can hang out in the boot. You know, depression, anxiety, panic attacks, whatever, they can hang out in the boot. But sometimes they kick the back seat in, and then they're sitting in the back seat and they're kicking the back of the driver's seat, and they're starting to be a bit annoying, and then they might slide into the front seat and they start playing with the radio, or like tapping on the sat nav, and I'm like, oi, and I'm trying to concentrate on the road, you know. And if you're not careful, they'll take over and they're driving the car and you're in the freaking boot, and then you're in real trouble. And so what I think is, you know, for cravings, for any kind of emotional stuff, you know, if you're dealing with alcohol problems or any kind of mental health issue, it's highly likely that you've got unresolved emotional problems and you don't have the correct coping mechanisms in place to deal with those emotions and to be able to sit with them. And something that when Simon was talking about that came to me, I was just noting things down in case people thought I was being rude, like, what is she doing looking at her phone? I was googling the Tony Slattery documentary so I can watch it later. Noting down things. But I think the power, your innate power, is sitting with those uncomfortable feelings and loving yourself anyway, or at least accepting that, you know, you can be lovable even if you've got anger problems, even if you're sad, even if you've got grief, even if you've been abused or whatever. That's where the power lies. And I think when you're in that moment of craving, you need to have something pre-prepared. So, like, I always think about it as, like, you know, now me looking after future me. So I have a list that's on the side of my wardrobe which faces my bed, and it's a list of things like, if I wake up in the morning and depression is like high, the list just says really basic stuff like get out of bed, brush your teeth, get a drink of water, go for a walk, you know. And it sounds really stupid. I mean, it's basic, but it works because I don't have to then think in that moment of depression or whatever of what I've got to do. So I would recommend, I imagine it would be the same for cravings. Cravings don't last long, like you say. It is only about 10 minutes psychologically long. But if somebody said to you, you know, you've only got 10 minutes to live, you're going to think, Christ, that's not long at all. But if someone said to you, you know, you've got to, I don't know, do something you really hate for 10 minutes, it's going to feel like a much longer time. And I think that's the thing with creating, you know, if you've got that, I need a fix now, 10 minutes is going to feel really long. But if you've got a list of your whys, why am I sober? What is going to happen if I have that drink? That, you know, what's going to be the fallout of that? Is future me, like, one of the things I always think about is the choice element. We've always got a choice, even if the choice is between something not great and something pretty crap, it's still a choice. And if you think about that choice and you think, okay, well, let's say I choose to have a drink, let's move down the road a little bit from there, what's going to happen? And if I choose not to have a drink, what's going to happen? And if I choose to have a drink, how am I going to feel? Okay, I'll probably feel pretty good in the moment, maybe, but I know where that goes. That good feeling lasts for 10 minutes, couple of hours, and then I'm feeling absolutely awful again. Or if I don't, in 10 minutes I'm going to be feeling good again. And actually having tools that work for you, that you've pre-planned. So for me, same as you, running is a huge one, especially if I'm in anxiety or panic or anything like that. Anger, anxiety, panic, high energy, feels horrible. Go for a run, do 10 star jumps. There's the really good Kundalini practice if you struggle with anger, called Fists of Fury. And I've done Fists of Fury a number of times. And, you know, this is why for a while I struggled being a meditation teacher, because I'm not that calm and quiet and peaceful. I'm quite and energetic, a bit hectic. And I'll do the meditation and I'm punching, you know, my meditation bolster and screaming, doing a cake, you know, but it gets it out of the body. And I think, you know, having tools in your kit that you know work for you. So some of the things I use are things like, if I can't meditate because I'm struggling with my mental health and that makes it hard for me to meditate, I use gong. I listen to gong meditation, or I use binaural beats, and binaural beats force you to meditate. You've got no bloody choice, which is brilliant. Or I'll, you know, if I need something physical, I'll go for a run, do 10 star jumps. If not, I've got, you know, I write this down, because when I'm not in a good space, I think that I can't call on any of my friends or family. So I've got names of people written down that I know that I can call, so that when I'm in that space where I'm thinking no one cares, everyone hates me, I can't call any of my friends, I've got a list of people that then reminds me, don't be ridiculous, of course these people love you, they're going to look after you. Because you don't have to believe all your thoughts. And that thought that you've got at that moment, and that feeling you've got in your body at that moment for that craving, you don't have to buy into that. You can override it. And I think it's just realising that you are the most powerful, you know, the addiction doesn't own you, you own the addiction. And I think this is where sometimes I get frustrated with the way things are taught. You know, it's like, we're the most powerful. Like, yeah, I might have the symptoms of depression and anxiety, but I'm the one that actually, I own myself, I own my body, not that illness or ailment. And I think it's the same with addiction. It's like, no, you need to come back to that point of like, I'm in control of this, I own this, I'm in a power position, and you are not gonna, you almost have to get really stubborn and a bit like, no, you know, I'm trying not to swear, but basically like, you know, I'm not going to let you win today. I'm winning, me, the happy one. You can you can do one. Sod off, craving. You're not winning today. And just like try and be like a warrior for yourself, kind of thing.
Yeah, I really like that idea of writing lists. That's wicked. Kate, you had something to say?
Oh yeah, sorry. There was a couple of things. There was that thing about the being able to stop and then catch yourself, and that sort of, I love the thing about the list, because it's like when you're in that moment, it's like the prefrontal cortex has gone offline. It's like the rest of the brain that, you know, where, you know, is heightened or in fight, flight or whatever, that emotionally activated. And that's that stronger bit, isn't it? And so it's like, okay, so we've got to calm ourselves to balance, so bring ourselves back into balance again, to find our homeostasis, is it called? Mm-hmm. And I love the thought of writing those lists, because it's almost like you've put your prefrontal cortex, so I'm getting a bit nerdy, on a bit of paper to give you the instructions that you can't generate until you've halted, until you've regulated by something like that, by shaking it, by running it. It's like you've it's like your your brain is on the wall
Yeah.
in the best possible way. I think that's genius.
Yeah.
I
Anyway,
would also recommend like having just on that point you've kind of triggered a thing. Basically it's called a pattern interrupt. So you get caught in thinking, feeling and proving loops. So you think a thing, let's say I think I've got a problem with alcohol, so you feel whatever the feelings associated with that are. So you start to behave in that same way, and when you behave in that same way, you prove yourself right. And your brain's always trying to prove you right. It doesn't like to be wrong, right? The actual part of the brain in the hippocampus that acts like Google. So when you think something, it will go, oh, here, let me prove you right, and it will show you all these different things. So if you're constantly, like I used to, thinking I'm fat, I'm stupid, I'm disgusting, nobody wants me around, you know, I'm worthless, I'm unlovable, like these are all the thoughts I used to have. My brain's going off when I have that thought and going, oh, let me prove you right. Remember that other time you felt unlovable? How about this time when you felt unlovable? How about this time? And I think, you know, this is what's going to happen when we have a craving. You're going to get reminded of all the other times that you were craving and how you kind of felt. So if you can create what they call a pattern interrupt, you interrupt this loop. And what I think is a really good pattern interrupt is this breathing technique. I've shared it on here before actually, called the harmony in hand. And it's a really simple breathing technique where you just hold the wrist, you take a deep breath, and then you breathe out and you say a word of how you want to feel. So whether that's calm or peaceful or loving or whatever it might be. So you just take a deep breath in, deep breath out, calm. And then you hold the thumb and you do the same thing. Calm, and then you hold the index finger, calm, and then you hold the middle finger, calm, and then you hold the ring finger, calm, and then the little finger, calm, and then you go back to the wrist. And the good thing about this, you can do it as many times as you need. It works for anxiety, it works for panic attacks, and it works as a pattern interrupt. So if you've got cravings, you can do this. And the good thing about this is a lot of the time when people give tools for things like cravings or anxiety or horrible feelings that you might be sitting with, the tools they give, like going for a run, is an awesome tool. But if you're sat at work, you know, or you're at a family party and you get a craving, you can't go for a run. You can't just be like, oh, I mean, you might be able to, it depends on your family, right, or your workspace. But there's often times when, you know, if you've created these awesome coping mechanisms, make sure they're coping mechanisms you can use anywhere. Can you use it on a packed tube? Can you use it, you know, at a family do or a wedding or something where you're like trapped there socially because it's awkward to leave? Or can you do it even if you haven't got your running trainer? Yeah, COVID, right, you know, perfect example, you know. And so something like having the harmony in hand and then having a list on your phone as well as written on your wardrobe or on your mirror or wherever you're going to have it, means that you get the craving and then you go, right, do the breathing, you know, and maybe for that you might use an affirmation like, I release this craving each breath, I release this craving each breath, I release this craving. You get your phone out, and on your phone, you know, saved in your notes somewhere where it's really easy to find, is that list that says, this is why I don't drink and this is what I need to do in this order to get over that craving. And do it when you feel good. Don't wait until you feel shit to then try and decide, because you're not going to be able to think of it.
Yeah, adding to that as well, actually, I get my clients, when we do the whys exercise after, to record into their phone why it's important they're doing this and what the reason is for. They've got a secret, like superpower to having on an album that says, do not look, it's there. So when they are in that moment, and you know, what we want to do is talk to that primitive part of the brain, they've got their resource of them talking in a really emotional state to themselves, which is hopefully hitting the part that's responsible for the behaviors. It's like, that's why. And you know, that's a really good one for when you're out and about as well. It's like, go to the bathroom, take yourself to the bathroom, like have a breath, you know, compose.
Oh, I love it. Have a word. No.
No.
Oh my god, I'm so doing that. I'm going to be like, hi Rachel, you're amazing. Just remember, you're awesome. You can be calm. Everything's going to be great. I love that idea.
And often, like,
you
you've
were
got
right.
resources within you, so it's just remembering that you can do this, having this willingness certainty in your own abilities, you can do this.
I'm going to go to Lisa and then I'm going to go to Dave.
I just wanted to say, it's not on that subject at all, but Crystal just commented that she wanted to follow up on last week's commitment to not drink this past week, and she's now on day 23.
Really?
So thanks, Simon.
That's what I was going to say, Lisa.
Oh, was you?
Yeah, because Rachel, Polly, I don't know if you saw it last week, but we actually said to sort of for people to make a commitment to actually try and go this week to the next live.
Amazing.
So well done, Crystal. Is anyone else not drank this week off the back of that? Because otherwise you've got 100 lines.
100 lines.
100 lines.
And who's going to commit till next week as well?
Yeah, definitely. Look, no one. Well, we're doing a good job, aren't we?
Yeah.
There's a delay. There's always a delay on Facebook.
Hey! There's one. There's another. No, it's the same person. Sorry.
Simon uses AF drinks. What about the rest of you? Do you drink AF drinks?
I do.
Yeah.
Well done, Debbie. Justin. Yeah. I do. Yeah. I drink. I'm not really into the alcohol-free spirits, to be honest, but a couple of the beers. But I think you've got to really be all right with it. Because if you're not, it can be really triggering. And I did wait quite a while before I did. And I look forward to them now, actually. You know, I might do a barbecue later, and I'm actually quite excited about having a little cheeky Heineken Zero with my barbecue.
Me too. I think it's the freshness of having something that's not sweet as well. That's what we look for. And I mean, I never drank beer as a drinker. I drank red wine. But, like, I really missed having something that wasn't sweet, and it's really hard. So that kind of Heineken 00 is my, like, you know, pre-drink dinner, just have that to sort of just, it's that transition period of like, okay, you know, now I kind of I've sat down, I guess. We've got Bex Blue 46 months here. Yes, I commit again, says Crystal. Yes, Pandora again, even me, Barbara says. Kathy says, me too, Amy. 7 months, Martha says. Me, 30, defo committing. So yes, everyone is listening to you, Dave.
Well, there's one here from someone says, why is Dave's face the same colour as his jumper?
They didn't say that, you just... Okay, what else have we got in terms of questions? The list is a great tool. I might try that. Thank you, Rachel. Totally agree. First time I've seen this session live and all the way through, it's been really helpful. I use exercise cycling to help my mood, but really want to try meditation. I'll try the Zen in 10, Rachel.
Yeah, do it.
I've just seen the best name in the whole world, Pandora Kennington. Oh my God, that is ridiculous. I love it. 76 days, well done.
Can I just recommend as well? I had a gong bath with Rachel on Monday, and I've got to say it was absolutely fantastic. So if anybody is thinking of doing something like that, please make the time to do it. Even just putting that time away, I put an hour aside, got my room all nice, and it was absolutely fantastic, Rachel. So thank you. And you've got a beautiful singing voice.
Oh, don't.
No, you are.
No,
I don't know why I'm laughing.
I'm not like a natural. I can only do it. I find it really hard doing it over Zoom because normally I can only do it because everyone's laying down. They've all got eye masks on and they're not looking at me, and I know that they're like, you know, out of it from the gong. And when I'm doing it here and it's like at a screen and I know it's being recorded and all that, I'm like, oh God, it's so horrible. I find it like really stressful. So I appreciate you said that.
Oh, it was beautiful, honestly.
I think I said to my wife, do you fancy a good old gong bath? She'd run a mile, to be honest.
It's a strange concept, but it's very
What is the gong bath? So do you want to explain?
So basically, you get naked and get in a bath. No, I'm joking.
Oh, that's a laugh, isn't it?
Sorry.
Yeah, Sid James.
You've got this. I'm going to show you but you have to first of all excuse the mess. I'm Mary Kondoing. I'm in the middle of Mary Kondoing my room, so excuse this pile of junk that's also in the way if you see it. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see it? So it's this instrument is a gong. And basically the gong has very, very expansive frequency when it plays the frequencies, and every single cell in your body has a specific what we call resonant frequency. So the resonant frequencies are the frequency that cell is its optimum environment for regeneration. So for example, your bones resonate at 7 or 8 hertz. So say for example, if I broke my arm, I could play 7 or 8 hertz to my arm and it would heal quicker than if I didn't. And there's a machine that sounds like I'm making it up, but I'm not, called a squid machine, like the animal, but it stands for like sequencing something. I don't know what it stands for, but anyway, it's like SQUID as an acronym. And they use that a lot for athletes and various people where they'll program a frequency and it will play that frequency. So this is just a more kind of organic way of doing that. And the way that I like to envisage it is when the certain frequencies go through the body, when their resonant frequency comes, the little cells have like their little like and they're like having a little disco and like and rejuvenating themselves. And so it works on that level with the physical body, but it also works on a mental level. So it helps to activate the left and right hemispheres of the brain, which creates new neural pathways and connections in the brain, helps to activate different frequencies within the brain. So you know, you might flip between kind of gamma and alpha and beta, but you also activate a lot of theta and delta, which are very good meditative frequencies and healing frequencies for the mind. And it also works in super esoteric ways, which I can't explain by science, where many people are, you know, I've been playing now for about 3 or 4 years, and the reports that I get from a lot of people are things like seeing geometric shapes and patterns, colours behind the eyes, feeling like they're floating, like their body's suddenly really weightless and they're not even on the ground anymore, feeling like they've met a spirit guide or they've got all this information coming through from they don't even know where, going to past lives, leaving their body, you know, all that kind of stuff, which is, you know, very esoteric and woo-woo, that I can't explain. But I think that what I found fascinating is even doing it online, people are having the same reactions and they're sleeping better, their pain is lessened, they are more able to deal with their emotions in day-to-day life. They you know, one woman came up with her business idea and then tagged me. She's like, I couldn't sleep after the gong and I was up till midnight and I've written this whole business plan, you know. So it really is an incredible tool to work with, and it really is medicine for the mind, the body and the soul. And if you want to geek out a little bit more, there's a blog post I've written called "What the F is a Gong Bath?", you know, following my sweariness. And on that there's a video, or you can Google Richard Rudis gong on YouTube and you'll be able to find him. He does blood tests before and after gong, and you can see that it changes the blood makeup in the body. So it's fascinating how it works, but it's very, very powerful. It's changed my life, and I think lots of other people's lives as well.
We'll pop your blog post on the group later, Rachel.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Yeah, so we're out of time really, so I just wanted to say thanks so much for coming, and we'll sort of put some details about both of you. You know, we didn't get a chance to talk about EFT, which is emotional freedom technique, which I know you're both practitioners, and that's really, really helpful. That's tapping, if you don't know.
Super powerful.
Which is really, really powerful for anxiety and also for triggers. And
on that, really quickly, I'm going to try and find, maybe we can put a link to this woman. Her name's either Peter or Petra. I've got to work out, I'm dyslexic, so I can't remember how it's spelled. And she's this incredible woman that I've just found, and she does EFT, but again, she does it from a very scientific perspective, and she's got loads of stats on her Instagram about like blind studies of like EFT versus fake tapping, or EFT versus other things for things like PTSD, and loads of other things which I imagine people in here might be suffering from, and showing just how effective within 4 to 8 weeks people having 80% remission from PTSD, and that's staying for, you know, 6 months afterwards and stuff like that. So she'd be a good resource on that to share as well, in terms of having good solid stats to back stuff up.
Yeah, so we'll collate all that and we'll put it in the on the bottom of the video. And yeah, so anything else from anyone before we go? William, Simon, Dave, Lisa, Kate?
My tree.
I love your plant.
It's really nice.
Lovely to see you, Polly and Rachel. Thanks for joining us.
No, thank you.
Yeah,
Very much.
fantastic.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, and we'll see you,
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
we'll see you next week.
And Alex, we miss you.
Yes, we
We do.
do miss you.
Oh, yeah.